Hello, everybody. I'm going to call this workshop together of the Montclair City Council. Um, so we have a roll call at this time, and 4 of the 5 council members are present. The council member Lopez is excused absence. And we will now go into the council workshop, and I'll have the city manager introduce the item.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. You'll recall back in 2020, the city received approximately $5.1 million in grant from the California Department of Parks and Recreation for development of the Reeder Ranch Park, which would, of course, be adjacent to the Reeder Ranch itself. Since then, staff has worked closely with EPT Design, utilizing extensive community input that was received since 2019 regarding what we should do with the design elements related to the development of this park. The project design is being presented tonight by EPT Design, represented by Adam Trujillo, who is in the audience with us tonight, and Stephen Carroll, Principal, and Goodell Architecture, represented by David Goodell. With that, I'll turn it over to, Adam, who's going to probably lead off the presentation.
I'm Steve.
Steve? Okay.
I'll move forward in case there's other questions.
Open aboard.
Is that going to move it? That's all we have is one slide. Looks good, though. Looks good.
I'll zoom. Let me change it.
Okay.
I have another one.
Well, while we're waiting on that, just a quick intro on myself. I'm Stephen Carroll, principal with EPT Design. Been rooted in Southern California for almost 60 years, so a second-generation firm. Been located in Pasadena for our entire existence, but I'm happy to say that we, during the pandemic, opened up a studio in Claremont. So Adam and I work in the Claremont studio and are excited to be working close to home. Just left, right? Got it, great. So good evening, Council. Excited to present this project to you tonight. I'll keep it brief and somewhat informal, so we'll open it up to questions. I have Adam Trujillo with me here today and David Goodell, the architect on the project. Just starting with location, I think everybody's familiar with the location on the south side of Holt. Sits just west of or immediately adjacent to the Reeder Ranch property. So we're just a few hundred feet from Ramona to the west. As a firm, our design process always begins with narrative. And in this case, we've got a great story to tell. And then we illustrate that through our design work. There's a great history here to the Reeder Ranch, and we did a lot of digging to unveil that and allow that to inform our design. Along with Reeder Ranch, Southern California, especially along the foothills, is blanketed with the citrus industry and its impact. This really does inform our design. You'll see that in the design itself. But if you look at like the upper left image there, the patterns that are created in these agricultural fields, even some of the playfulness in the packing labels and the design of those, that's really beginning to create some infrastructure for our design plan. And then in our research, we thought this was an interesting study to include. You can see how it's not only informed elements of our communities over time, but some of which are still in place. The packing house history, the Claremont Packing House is where our studio resides, so I'm proud to have that on this map. Some of the parks, and then the educational components with the museums. Our process also began with the information that we received on the grant funding. So in all the work that we do with any grant funding attached to it, we stay pretty strict to the requirements. In this case, the event space, nature-inspired playgrounds, a fitness component, public art, and then a drop-off element. The images on the right were clearly just early on. We collect a lot of images to help illustrate this narrative, and these were some of the images that we used to present along with the city staff. So into our design. On the right-hand side, where we've noted the historic Reeder Ranch, the trees that you see there, the sort of the half-tone color trees there, are the existing historic citrus trees. We went out and measured those. They're about 22 feet on center, and that established the framework for our design. So we took an agricultural grid, if you will, and laid that across our site that sits just to the west of it. And you can start to see that in the design, sort of the two allée of trees that blanket the lawn, the central lawn component, really started to take or give shape to the park itself. Another important piece that David will speak to a little bit later was the community center building and the location of that. And so we did a lot of studies, presented a number of those studies to city staff, and ultimately ended on this southern location. Sits at the bottom of the plan. The rest of the design, and I'll get into some blow-up studies, but at the top of the page along Holt is our drop-off component. On the west-hand side is parking. Center to the park is this large event lawn panel with shade trees. And then on the east side, along the historic Reeder Ranch property side, is our play component. Oh, and I should also mention a fitness element that's down in the southwest corner of the site. I won't get into too much detail on plant species, but in general, we want to incorporate low water, low maintenance species. Most of the plant selection is California native, and then some adaptive species as well, but all to bring back that sort of historic California style of landscape. So at the north end of the site along Holt, we have our park entry. At the center of the park is a pedestrian sort of gateway, symbolic entry or arrival to the park itself, and you'll see that in the next slide in an elevation. And then along the front of that is a drop-off element. So we also looked at this park and how it might serve the Reeder Ranch property itself. So if there's events that are hosted there, we can use this drop-off. And then there's gated access on the east side that connects to Reeder Ranch itself. And then we brought parking on the west-hand side of the site. We didn't want parking to blanket the front. So if you're driving by along Holt, even though it's a very quick street, you'll have a really nice glimpse into the park itself. And then to add an additional layer, sort of a protective layer, if you will, if you're within the park itself, there's a trellis structure that runs east and west just below that drop-off component. And the drop-off also has an area for school bus parking, or if you're hosting an event, you could conceivably have a food truck in that location as well. This is a rendering of an elevation, so sort of standing, actually probably in the street, but let's just call this standing along the sidewalk. There's a sort of a dedicated Reeder Ranch Park sign. The fencing takes on sort of an agrarian style or sort of feel to it. very transparent. We want as much visibility into the park. You can see centered on this view is David's really great building design, and I'll let him speak to the character of that. And then, of course, in the foreground to that building is our large lawn component. Speaking of which, this becomes a really important and component of the park, and most of the design is sort of centered on this feature. So whether it's parking on the west or the playground that's on the east side, it's all centered around this large lawn that can support informal play on a daily basis and also support community activity, community events. So we talked about anything from movie nights, which you see down in that lower image, or a band or something like that that sets up on the porch in front of the building. Seasonal events, holiday events, everything that could happen within a space like this. So we try to keep it as flexible as we can and at the same time provide a shade element. And then on the east side, and I'll get into that, is the play area, which is divided into 2 to 5 play and 5 to 12 play, with the 2 to 5 being further from the street and closer to the community center building. So the play itself was supposed to be nature inspired, and we were really leaning on the history of agriculture, and wanted to introduce wood material or things that felt very natural, maybe a little different from what you see in a lot of park playgrounds. So you can see the forms here and the use of the material with 5 to 12, sort of the older kids, and the larger play equipment to the north, and then the smaller play equipment pushed to the south, away from the street, closer to the community building, close to where we have a picnic area and dining tables. And then this is an elevation looking west. So if you were standing in the Reeder Ranch Grove, you can see on the left-hand side the community center building, which also has a picnic area, covered picnic shelter attached to it. And then the foreground of that, so that lower left-hand corner, is a 2 to 5 sort of playhouse type structure. And then throughout there is a mix of different play materials. We like to reinforce different types of activity, different type of functions for kids, different, upper body, lower body. All the way to the right is our largest playground component. It's a climbing tower. It has a couple slides that come out of it. It's a wooden structure, and then architecturally, the form making speaks to sort of that pitched roof, gabled roof that you see on David's community building. And then at the southern end of the site is the building. You can see some of the inspirational imagery that we were grabbing along with David when we were kind of pitching the idea, sort of stylistically, of what this might look like, how it might open up to the park itself. In the foreground, so just sitting above that community building, is a space that we referred to as the porch. So we envision people sitting on that porch, watching their kids play on the lawn or in the playground itself. But then the porch secondarily can serve as a stage element. So if we are hosting events, if there's a Christmas gala, a Christmas tree could go up on that porch component. But it's very, very highly flexible space. And with that, I'm going to hand it off to David, and he'll talk about the building and the components of it.
Thank you, Stephen.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. I should add to Stephen's introduction that we have been working together with EPT. I have been working with EPT for nearly 30 years now, so it's a very mature collaboration, if you will. So the Recreation Center was very much conditioned by the requirements of the grant. 75% of that space had to be for active, basically multi-purpose use, and only 25% was allowed for support uses, which is very difficult in a community recreation center, which needs pretty good restrooms and restrooms also that could service the park. And so we really worked very hard with staff to get the efficiency together in the main building, which is what the grant is supporting. The left-hand building actually both provide storage that's necessary for the recreation building, and there just wasn't enough storage within the grant version of that building, plus a research office that would be supportive of the Reader Ranch and its history. The building is extremely extroverted, and I hope you'll see that in the sketch that follows. But as Steve developed the notions about the frontal stage and the porch, basically there's a very open and activity-centered transition from the building to the park. And as you see in the plan, the north wall is all glass. So that there's a real transparency between the activities in the multipurpose room and in the park. The reception area has a view out to the park. We'll have the ability to sell tickets for community-wide events from that frontal window. And then the restrooms on the right will serve the covered picnic area. And there's a hallway that leads from the multipurpose room to the picnic and back and forth. Sink and barbecue that staff will have access to on the south of the restroom area. The architecture basically follows a couple of cues. One is that we all decided early on that it really wasn't a good cue to mimic the house, the Reader Ranch house, and that this was really more akin to a support building for that house, as would a barn be. And so some of the formal elements of the building take their cues from barns. The two flanks are cedar wood, and that cedar would be stained with a semi-transparent stain that will let that wood kind of last for many a year. We're looking on the right-hand side at the office building, and at the center, the all-glass wall of the multipurpose recreation room. On the left-hand side, you can sort of see the picnic area. All of the roofing and the metal cladding on the building is zinc, which is basically a maintenance-free, long-lasting material that doesn't need to be painted or treated in any way. This is a building a shot where we've taken away the trees just to show clearly what's happening on the left-hand side with the building's wing and the picnic area. And a head-on elevation just to show the proportions of that building, a very generous window into the office space that will look out over the park, and again, the all-glass wall looking out into the park from the recreation space. A rough shot of the interior. It's a very simple interior. The floor will be a polished concrete. There will be wood slat treatment of the wall. Those wood slats will also provide acoustical treatment because they basically pass right through to the insulation of the wall, and that insulation will absorb sound. So we're looking out now basically out the south wall of the building, and a very large monitor will occupy the center of that room for staff to be able to present. On both sides of the room, for the kitchen and the storage, will be barn doors that slide open and closed. I think that's a summary of the presentation, and we are now open for questions or comment.
Okay, I'll start with Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have, this is a wonderful presentation. I'm very excited to see it come to fruition. But I have one small question about the slide that was page 13, and I'm looking at the community building, and there's something on the roof that's white. Is that just, yeah, on the roof of the community building on page 13. Is that just for interest, or is that a solar panel?
Sorry, I'm working on it.
Okay. Yes. There, oh,
Now it'll probably keep going.
there.
That is actually the roof of the picnic shelter, I believe. but-
Oh,
Yes, and again, this sketch was more focused on the landscape elements, and the building was kind of a placeholder. So that roof is a little bit different than what is on the architectural
Okay.
drawings.
thank you for that clarification.
Mayor Pro Tem Rue.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. In looking at the landscaping, and I have not had a chance to completely review this, will it be drought-tolerant landscaping, considering we're in a drought and we're going to be in one for quite a number of years?
Yeah, let me see if I can jump back quickly. Oops. So the palette is both native and native adaptive. So when we're using native adaptive, they're species that are adaptive to this client. So to answer your question, yes, they are drought tolerant. They will still rely on irrigation, although our expectation typically when using this type of palette is getting them established, which takes about 2 years. So it'll be irrigated for 2 years, and then hopefully we can wean off the irrigation system moving beyond that.
And with the irrigation, will we be able to, because I'm very concerned about needing water for drinking, will we be able to use any tertiary treated water on here?
We don't have reclaimed.
No?
No, I don't believe there's reclaimed available, and we weren't putting in like a collection device of any sort.
Okay, I'm just looking long-term into the future. Everything's going to have to be water neutral, so we're going to really have to look at that. I'm hoping maybe between now and the time we actually establish this, we can deal with the issue about the water. And in looking at slide 13, Councilmember, you don't have to bring it up. Councilmember Johnson thought it was solar panels I as well. What are we doing for energy efficiency on here? You don't need to bring up slide 13. I'm just, what are we doing with
General.
energy efficiency?
Can you speak to the mechanicals? Yeah.
We have provided on the picnic shelter roof the capacity for solar panels to be installed. And I would say, in general, the approach to the building has been to provide north glazing, which won't bring in sun or as much heat as we would on the south, east, and west. And the building is relatively solid and insulated, except for the main window exposures. We are basically insulating both the roof and the walls to a level that exceeds requirements, and that's a summary of where the energy initiatives are.
But we could do solar if we wanted to,
Yes.
because that's another issue. And in looking at some of the buildings, I'm looking even at this slide up in front of us, 12 of 20, the wood structures. What type of maintenance is needed on those?
We've had a discussion about that, and if we use a semi-transparent stain on the wood, we can anticipate, say, every 2 to 3 years, we might need to go back and basically light sand and re-stain the wood. That's basically the maintenance program. And it can go longer. It's dependent on a lot of factors, the weather, the heat, and of course it's getting more difficult. But it will need to be maintained. Yes.
Good evening. Adam Trio with APT Design. So on these play structures,
They are natural wood materials, and they will be left to weather. So it's a hard wood, and as it weathers, they become stronger. And as far as regular maintenance, there really is very minimal. The only maintenance would be required is if, someone were to come and do something to deface it, then we would come and sand it down.
And in some of the structures, I don't know if they're all natural wood or not. I'm looking at the one that seems to be a little children's playhouse. It's to the lower, if you're looking at the screen, the lower right of the screen, it shows the children. It appears to be a shelter of some type. Is that natural wood, or is that some type of a composite?
It's all natural wood.
It's all natural wood.
Yep.
Do we have anything in here that would be using recycled materials of any type?
Not on the playground itself, but we're looking on the site furnishings. So
Okay.
we have park benches, tables, trash receptacles. Those are using recycled materials.
Okay. And are we looking at all at any type of LEED certification?
No, we are not.
Okay. All righty, thank you. That's all I have.
Yeah, going back to the playground area, I really like the staff really look hard at this because, I mean, it's very, real beautiful. I'm just concerned about maintenance issues. I'm also concerned about vandalism, and we have to replace parts, and we can't find the parts. They're expensive. So I really like to have Ed, if staff can really look at the playground, just to make sure, is this going to work for this location, or should we go with a more conventional playground equipment there? So.
That has been a point of discussion at the staff level. We did look at the representation here before you very seriously and had that similar discussion with the team. And the equipment that is being recommended is, in fact, even though it is wood, as indicated by Adam, it will be allowed to weather naturally. So it will not require, unlike the building, the playground equipment will not require regular maintenance. When it comes to things like damage to the slides, that of course occurs at the parks anyway, and we would just have to have a regular maintenance schedule for replacing those damaged components. But we believe that even though this is wood material, it is just as durable, in many cases more durable than what we find in a normal park setting that might use some tubular steel or some other components, including some recycled plastic materials that are part of their design elements. So we're fairly confident that this particular style that is being recommended for the park will be acceptable. Again, when it comes to the building, staff did ask that the wood treatments be provided as part of the last adjustments to the project. Central to that discussion was the maintenance of that wood. And so it was determined that by putting on that sealant from the very beginning to provide not only a protection but a color texture to the wood, that it would be easier to maintain that wood on an ongoing basis simply by reapplying relatively easy oil-based paint to the wood elements in the building itself. That is not a significant maintenance problem, so we think this will work going forward very well.
Okay. My other question, I mean, overall, this is a very beautiful project, so I commend staff, or I commend the consultant for putting this together. But so I'm leading to security. So I just want to make sure that this site has lots of lighting in the parking lot, on the field, so when our police officers come through, they can see real well, or members of the public feel safe there. I mean, do we have a lot of lighting there in the parking lot especially?
Yes, we're doing a photometric study to make sure we're meeting all lighting requirements as well as along the pathways. This is a lot of lighting. We're also installing security, CCTV cameras.
Good.
Yeah, so security's been a very top priority for us in discussions with city staff. So yeah, we understand kind of the location of this park, and also been discussing about how even it may be patrolled at night. So definitely considering that aspect of the design.
I believe the police department is involved in the discussion as well as far as security is concerned. So, and then I see that on on the boundary with the historical Rita Ranch, there's a 6-foot high fence there, and there's 2 gates there to secure the Rita Ranch. It looks like it.
That's correct, pedestrian gates.
And then. Yeah, that's the map.
Yeah, so there's kind of a double gate at the north, and then on the southern gate, a smaller pedestrian.
Right. I
On
see
the
that.
other side, yeah.
And the city can have those gates could be locked at the two pedestrian accesses. And then there's a vehicle gate at the entryway too, that's been proposed. And is there a gate, no gate's been proposed for the pedestrian entry off of Holt?
There will be.
There will
yeah.
be,
So we'll
okay.
have on the left side of the plan, we have a vehicle in, so that'll be a sliding gate entry.
Okay.
And then in the middle is a pedestrian-only access, and that will be also a sliding gate that can be locked up at night. And then on the far east or the right side will be the vehicle exit, and that'll be also a sliding motorized gate.
Okay, and on the south side of the property where the community center is at, and there's picnic tables, is that gonna be a secured area, or will that be open?
It'll be an open structure. You know, we looked at that area as not only just for picnicking, but also for, you know, field trips, children
Right.
gathering, and kind of having that play of in and out of the playground was important.
But is there a case we have transit hanging out there all the time, and we wanna you wanna limit the use of that area because of issues? Is there a gate in there too, a fence or anything, or?
There's not a
That'd be
double,
wide open.
not a double security fence there.
Okay.
Again, we were trying to keep that much more of a kind of a welcoming space for
Right,
the community.
and I understand that.
Yeah, but I did want to note, we did secure the area that David pointed out, which was the barbecue and sink that's kind of to be used by staff. That has an extra security fence behind that to keep, you know, just any sort of vandalism from back behind that area, behind the building.
Okay. All right, well,
So further, when you think about this park, Mr. Mayor, think of MacArthur Park. It would have a gate that we are
Yeah.
probably going to make an automatic gate, so it will be timed to close and open at certain times during the day. And also keep in mind that while we haven't developed the recreation activities that will occur here on a regular basis, we do anticipate that the park will be staffed probably throughout most of its operating hours, if not all of the operating hours.
It's a requirement of the grant, so we will have to have that available.
Yes.
that's fine, and then if we have staff secured as, staff on site, obviously, staff will have security for staff as well, am I correct? For the site, we'll make sure the staff is secured.
Yes, yes. And there was idea of when we would have events and things, instead of putting up a permanent gate-type
Yeah.
structure, that we might have some portable type of kind of barricades that we could, you know, that are nice-looking, that could kind of cordon off that area.
Okay.
Or when we do some private.
Well, overall, again, this is a very beautiful project, and I commend staff and the consultants bring this forward. I think this will be very beneficial for the city of Montclair, for the residents of Montclair, especially in this area where it does lack parks. And then, of course, next door, the historical Rita Ranch, and this will obviously, hopefully, bring some synergy, and then we can further develop that side of the property. So I have no further questions or comments, and I'm not sure what action are you seeking today, Ed? Do you have any action, or it's just questions or comments, and
Just a presentation and question
want
and
to
answer.
make sure we're all happy with it? If we're all happy with it, then you
Yes.
continue to move forward. I don't see anybody not happy with it, so we'll move forward then on it. I will say thank you then. And I know we have public comment. I'm not sure, Andrea, we have anybody online who wants to make a public comment on our Zoom line, our phone line? No? No hands? Okay. I don't see anybody there who wants to comment on public comment on the agenda. So if that's the case, then we will go ahead and adjourn this meeting, and we'll come back later to our regular city council meeting. Thank you.